You know, I always get nervous at the beginning of classes, and just like the first second. Once I start rolling,
I'm
fine.
beyond it for a second. My dad, I admitted to my father that I still get nervous every time I teach even, and he said when you stop you should retire.
So welcome. Welcome to our Shabbat service, our joint RCD and downtown service. Maybe we should, of course it's nice to see everybody, both here in person and out there wherever you are in cyberland. So it can't hurt to begin with introductions, even if they've been done earlier, it never can hurt again. So why don't we go around the room in sort of this direction, say a word or two about yourself.
Hi, I'm Lisa Rapport. I live down the street at the riverfront. I've been with RCD for a long time, several decades. I teach at Wayne State University in the Department of Psychology, mostly in the clinical psychology doctoral program.
Hi, I'm Tony Dilloff, a co-leader, the designated song starter. I live within walking distance. I'm a member of RCD.
Hi, Gabri Harris. Help out with music and things at the downtown synagogue once in a while, of East Lansing.
Al Saperstein, member of all the synagogues, retired from Wayne State University.
Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. I'm Phil Newman. I'm with Downtown Synagogue on the board, and I live in Farmington Hills, so I have a little bit of a commute to get here.
Ariana Silverman, I have the privilege of serving as the rabbi of the Downtown Synagogue, and I live here in Detroit.
Who wants to go in? Harriet Saperstein, one of the almost founding members, and we're glad to be with you all today.
Bobby Lewis, member of the Downtown Synagogue. We live at the Park Shelton next to the Art Museum, and we're both retired, but I'm a contributing writer for the Jewish News.
I'm Joe Lewis, and I'm with Bobby.
I'm Joelle Averbach, and we live in Huntington Woods.
Aaron Averbach, I'm with her.
I'm Fred Rose from Oak Park, longtime member of the Downtown Synagogue, retired.
I'm Alan Gale. I'm retired from the Jewish Community Relations Council. I'm here with my friend Jeff Stern, who's a member of RCD.
I'm Jeff Stern, I'm a member of RCD.
I'm Melvin Lewis, I live in Southwest Detroit.
And I'm Stephanie Dilloff, and I'm a member of RCD.
Thanks everybody, and again, thanks for being here. We have Gavri accompanying us on the banjo, so we're having sort of a Jewish hootenanny, or as Lisa said, a jutenanny. Welcome to it. How lovely are your tents, O Yaakov. How fine your encampments, Israel. Page 140. And as for me, drawn by your love, I come into your house. I lay me down in a humble surrender before your holy shrine in awe. Great one, how I love your house's sight, adore your glorious dwelling place. And as for me, I fall in prayer. My body I bend down. I greet, I bless, I bend the knee before the one who fashions me. As for me, my prayer is for you, gentle one. May it be for you a time of desire. O God, in the abundance of your love, respond to me in truth with your help. Page 141.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. We'll turn to page 143 for the blessing of putting on a talit, if that's something you so choose to do. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להתעטף בציצית.
Amen.
And we continue on page 152 onward with morning blessings. Traditionally in RCD, we take turns jumping in as we will in either English or Hebrew. Blessed are you, Awakener, our God, life of all the worlds, who removes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids.
Blessed are you, the Provident, our God, life of all the worlds, who gives the bird of dawn discernment to tell day from night.
Blessed are you, the Fashioner, our God, life of all the worlds, who stretches forth the earth upon the water.
Blessed are you, the lamp, our God, life of all the worlds, who makes the blind to see.
Blessed are you, the Compassionate, our God, life of all the worlds, who clothes the naked.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei ha'olamim matir asurim.
Blessed are you, the helping hand, our God, life of all the world, who raises up the humble.
Blessed are you, the way, our God, life of all the worlds, who makes firm a person's steps.
Blessed are you, the generous, our God, life of all the worlds, who acts for all my needs.
Blessed are you, the mighty, our God, life of all the worlds, who girds Israel with strength.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ha'echal lamim oter Yisrael b'tzipora.
Blessed are you, the imageless, our God, life of all the worlds, who made me in your image.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei ha'olamim she'asani bat chorim.
Blessed are you, renewing one, our God, life of all the worlds, who gives strength to the weary.
And all together on this final one. Blessed are you, the architect, our God, the sovereign of all the worlds, who shaped the human being with wisdom, making for us all the openings and vessels of the body. It is revealed and known before your throne of glory, that if one of these passageways be opened when it should be closed, or blocked up when it should be free, one could not stay alive or stand before you. Blessed are you, miraculous, the wondrous healer of all flesh. Page 164. My God, the soul you gave me is pure. You have created it, you have shaped it, and you have breathed it into me, and you preserve it deep inside of me. And someday you will take it from me, restoring it to everlasting life. This short and beautiful prayer starts each day and offers comfort in times of stress. Self-esteem is a precious gift. Even though we may lose it in the tragedies of the present, it will be restored to us in the future. God, the healer, returns our soul to us. Elohei neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohei neshama shenatata bi tehorahi.
Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi.
Now we're on page 177. Jeffrey?
Please rise as you are able. Beginning of the Sukkah Dizina for Baruch Shemar. Baruch Shemar V'haya Olam Baruch Hu Baruch Oseh Bereshit Baruch Shemo Baruch Omer Ve'oseh Baruch Hu, Baruch Gozer Umkayim Baruch Shemo, Baruch Mirachem Ha'aretz Baruch Hu, Baruch Mirachem Ha'abriya Baruch Shemo, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tolereya Baruch Hu, Baruch Ma'avir Elokai Levi Ora Baruch Shemo, Baruch Ha'ad V'Kayam L'Netzach Baruch Hu, Baruch Hodeh U'Matzil, Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. Be seated.
And we're on page 185. We have a volunteer to read that portion, please.
Nature is God's nigud, a wordless melody of unfolding life. To awaken to God, we must hear the nigud. To awaken to God, we must listen in deep silence. Silence arises when thinking ceases. If we would know God, we must quiet the mind. Cease the chatter that passes for knowledge, when in fact it only flatters the foolish. We cannot live without words, but let us not imagine that words are sufficient. As the symphony needs rest to lift music out of noise, so we need silence to lift truth out of words. Do you want me to read the rest?
I'll continue. There are two things on 185. There are two things that fill my soul with holy reverence and ever-growing wonder. The spectacle of the starry sky that virtually annihilates us as physical beings, and the moral law within us that raises us to infinite dignity as intelligent agents. 231.
We'll join together with the words of Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
7:43. Could we have a volunteer, please?
To the top or the bottom?
The top.
Look at this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the realities and verities of existence, the bliss of growth, the splendor of action, the glory of power. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Page 245, Happy Kaddish. Yit Gadal, Yit Gadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma Dibra Kirotei, V'yamlik Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayeg, V'chobeit Yisrael, V'agalau, V'zman Kariv, V'yimrom. Yitbarak, V'yishtabak, V'yishbarach, V'yishmaman, V'yisnaseh, V'yisadar, V'yiskaled, V'yiskalal, Shemei V'yisha, Leila, Leila Minchal, Birchata, V'yishirata, V'tushbata,
Amen. Please rise as you are able for the Baruch Hu on page 247. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMorach. Baruch Adonai HaMorach ve'Elohim v'Ahed. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol.
Page 268. Again, we ask for a volunteer. Page 268, the lower part,
Lower part.
the fine print.
Every day, creation is renewed. Wake up and see unfolding in the spreading light of dawn. The world and all it contains coming into being, new, fresh, filled with divine goodness and love. Every day, creation is renewed, reflected in the great lights. We see a new day, one precious day, eternity.
Yeah, please turn to page 272.
With an abounding love you love us, nurture our God. With great compassion do you care for us. Our source, our sovereign, just as our ancestors placed their trust in you, and you imparted to them laws of life. So be gracious to us too, and teach us. Our fount, our loving parent, caring one, be merciful with us and place into our hearts ability to understand, to see, to hear, to learn, to teach, to keep, to do, to uphold with love all that we study of the Torah.
On 274.
Enlighten us with your Torah, cause our hearts to cling to your mitzvot. Make our hearts one, to love your name and be in awe of it. Keep us from shame and from humiliation and from stumbling today and always. For we have trusted in your holy, great, and awesome name. May we be glad, rejoicing in your saving power, and may you reunite our people from all corners of the earth, leading us proudly and dependent to our land. For you are the redeeming God, and have brought us near to your great name to offer thanks to you and lovingly declare your unity. Blessed are you, abundant one who lovingly cares for your people Israel.
Page 277.
For the Shema. Shema Yisrael,
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
We sing it, Yehavta, 8, Adonai Elohecha, L'chol Levavcha, L'chol Nafshecha, L'chol Me'atecha, L'chayu, Ha'karim, Ha'elef, Asher, Anochim, Yisavcha, Hayom, Kol Levavecha, V'shinantam Levanecha, V'divarta Bam, V'shitecha, V'beitecha, V'alecha, V'ader, V'shartecha, V'kumecha, V'shartam Le'ol Al Yedecha, V'hayu, L'chotot V'einecha,
Page 278. It came to pass, and will again, that if you only listen to the voice of the Eternal One, your God, being sure to do whatever has been asked of you today, the one, your God, will make of you a model for all nations of the earth. And there will come upon you all these blessings, as you listen to the call of the Abundant One, your God. Blessed be you in the city, blessed be you upon the field. Blessed be the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your lamb, the fruit of your cattle, the calving of your oxen, and the lambing of your sheep. Blessed be your basket and your kneading trough. Blessed be you when you come home, and blessed be you when you go forth.
See, I have placed in front of you today both life and good, both death and ill, commanding you today to love the boundless one your God, to walk in ways I have ordained, keeping the commandments, laws, and judgments, so that you survive and multiply. The bountiful your God will bless you on the land you are about to enter and inherit. But if your heart should turn away, and you not heed and go astray, and you submit to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall be destroyed completely. You shall not live out a great expanse of days upon the land that you now cross the Jordan to possess. I call as witnesses concerning you both heaven and earth, both life and death, that I have placed in front of you a blessing and a curse. Choose life, that you may live. You in your seat.
Page 284. Can we have a volunteer, please?
The boundless one told Moses, "Speak to the Israelites, tell them to make themselves tzitzit upon the corners of their clothes throughout their generations. Have them place upon the corner tzitzit a twine of royal blue. This is your tzitzit. Look at it and remember all the mitzvot of the Eternal One, and do them, so you won't go on after the lusts of your heart, or after what catches your eye, so that you remember to do all my mitzvot, and be holy for your God. I am the faithful one, your God, who brought you from Mitzrayim to be for you a God. I am the infinite, your God."
And now, page 291. Yehamoha Adonai. Hold on. One more time. No, I got it. Yehamoha Adonai.
Turn to page 295 for the Amida. We'll say the opening blessings and brachot together, and then you'll have time to say your own individual prayer as well. So please rise as you're able, page 295. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloheinu Eloheinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Sarah Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Rivka Elohei Yaakov Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah טובים, וכונן הכל, זוכר חסר ואימהות, ומביא גורל לבני בניהם, למען שמו ויאהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור דלם אדוני על משיח, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיינו ורחמים, צומח נופים ורופא חולים, ומסיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לשני עפר, מחמוך בגבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך מגיד ומחייב, ומסיר ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות כל חי. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי כל חי. Page 303. מקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם כשמנשמתו בשמם הרום, כך כתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה, ויאמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות בארץ כבודו. אז בקורש גדול, אדיר וחזק, משמיעים קול, מתנסים למצרפים, ומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, שתמלוך עלינו, כי אנחנו לחיי, מתי תמלוך בציון, וקרוב לימינו לעולם ועד, ישכון תתקדש ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ונצח נצחים, ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. Mashiach Tzidkecha, Yimloch Adonai Elam Melech Zion Ledovador, Hallelujah. Ledovador Nagid Galech Ol Netzach Netzachim Kedoshaka Nagish B'shivtecha Elohinu Mipinu Lo Yemosh Elam Va'ed, Ki El Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. יהיו בני ישראל
olam. Ish et yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat, לעשות את השבת לדור לדורם. ביום השישי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Now for the Torah service.
Now for the Torah service.
You may be seated.
So it is fitting that we transition to the Torah service after singing the Shamru, because the Shamru actually appears in our Torah portion this week. It appears at the end of the first year of the triennial cycle reading, which is kind of cool. It's always nice to have our liturgy located in our text. We are going to continue with our Torah service. We are privileged this morning that we have both Gabri Yaris and Jeff Stern as our Torah readers. Would anyone like to, yes, would anyone like to carry the Torah for our Hakafah? Which I have to admit is going to require a little bit of maneuvering, but I'm sure someone is up to the task. Thank you, Fred. Excellent. And for our 3 aliyot this morning, do we have people who would like to do an aliyah? Something special has happened recently for you, or you are a Kohen lady and you like to have that aliyah, or you just really love the Torah. Aha, see, who doesn't raise their hand when I say that? There we go. Aaron, and who else?
Eliana's raising her hand.
Eliana, here's the thing, sweetheart. 12 years from now, I am going to be so honored to call you up for an aliyah. I can't believe you're making me wait that long. But we can't until then. Someone from RCD. How about Carol disappeared? Oh, she's right there. Carol, would you like our second aliyah? Excellent. And for our third. Going once. Go. Carl, would you like the third aliyah?
You're in the front row here. If no one else wants it.
Would you like the third aliyah?
Okay, sure.
Okay, sure. Excellent. All right, not yet though. Okay, our Torah service begins on page 382. Perfect. אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות עולמים ממשלתך בכל הדור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני מלך ועולם ועד אדוני עוז ימו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום אדוני רחמנים היטיב Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai iti, uneroma Shemo yachdav
Lecha Adonai Agedu, Ve'animru, Hatiferet, Ve'hanetzach, Ve'hamon, Ki Bo Hashamayim U'Haaretz, Ki Bo Hashamayim U'Haaretz. Adonai Echad, V'hamid Na'aseh
So, one second, Aaron, we have the privilege of having two traditions together this morning. The Reconstructionist tradition in the, we've got them out, awesome, in the Torah blessings is to switch out Bachar Banu, implying the chosenness of the Jewish people, for Asher Kirvanu Lavodato, for drawing us to your service. You are welcome to use either bracha, as you are called up for the Torah reading, as is your custom or desire. I do need the two consent roll. So this is, here we were, was it 28? We were at 28. Here, okay. Okay, right on. It should be right here. Or kitisa. Perfect. That's exactly what we want God to be saying to Moses. Oh, you could do, I mean, the full Kriya is very long. So, maybe it's for sure, that's another Joshua. Right. Okay. We are also merging two traditions this morning in terms of Torah reading cycles. The downtown synagogue is using the triennial cycle, so we're going to do the first two aliyot of the triennial cycle, and then Jeff Stern from RCT is our Torah reader for the third aliyah, and he is going to do it from the full Kriya, so we're going to move a little bit along in the Torah as we move to our third aliyah. Our Torah portion this morning, of course, is Kitisa, which includes the very famous story of the golden calf. However, in the beginning, there's some good stuff too, and we're going to read that in the first two aliyot. We take a census of the, you could say Israelite people, but it's not really. It's just the men who are of military service. So men who are of a certain age and of a certain ableness of body, which I would suggest is not the whole people, and not everybody who should be counted. But there you go. So they are counted in part by giving a half shekel. And that half shekel in some ways is seen as a way of warding off the discomfort of counting Jews. We don't really like to count, and figuring out how many people there are that way. This morning, I am not going to require everyone to contribute a half shekel in order to get to our oneg. However, I'll leave it at that. We contribute in different ways. I am delighted to have Gavri as our Torah reader, and Aaron is our first aliyah. I will ask you for your Hebrew name. Yeah. Ya'amod, Chaim Avraham ben Shmuel, Aliyah Rishona.
Baruch Hu Adonai Baruch. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher karbanu le'avotav v'nitan lanu et Torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'daber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Ki tisa et rosh bnei Yisrael yifkileihem v'natnu ish kefer nafsho l'Adonai tichod otam v'yad vahem neged tichod otam ze yitnu over al hapikudim v'chatzit hashekel v'shekel chodesh 20 gela hashekel mechatzit hashekel truma l'Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So I was like, I'm forgetting something. What I was forgetting was to announce the page number for you guys.
Yeah.
Our parsha begins on page 523. God, we just read chapter 30, verses 11 through 13. We are going to continue with chapter 30, verse 14, which starts on 524. So we are starting with verse 14 on page 524.
Are we doing it stay up or sit down?
It is up to you. Sort of in the COVID world, we've been sitting back down, but I still want to give you a little yashkar. Our second aliyah this morning. Carol. What is your Ta'amod le'abat Avraham Avinu l'aliyah sheni.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamparah. Baruch Adonai Hamparach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirvanu lavodato v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Ko haover al pikudim miben 20 shana v'mala yitnen tuma Adonai. Asher lo yarbeh v'hadar lo yamit ממחצית השקל לתת את תרומה אדוני לכתר על נפשותיכם לקחת את כסף הכיבורים מאת בני ישראל ונתת אותו על עבודת אוהל מועד והיה לבני ישראל זיכרון לפני אדוני לכפר על נפשותיכם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam v'nata b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So we are going to switch for the third aliyah to page 538. Gabriel, I just need the tikkun to roll the Torah. Page 538, we are in chapter 33, verse 12. So Carl, just give me one moment, and then you get to come up. All right, so chapter 33, verse 12. Is it right here? One more? Awesome. Right over there. Okay. Our third ayah, again, chapter 33, starting verse 12, on page 538. Ya'amod. Avi ben Avraham Basar Shlishi. Baruch Adonai Baruch Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
ויאמר משה אל אדוני, ראה אתה אומר אלי, העל את העם הזה, ואתה לא הודעתני את אשר תשלח עמי. ואתה אמרת, ידעתיך בשם וגם מצאת חן בעיניי. ואתה אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך, הודיעני נא את דרכיך. ואדעך למען אמצא חן בעיניך, וראה כי עמך הגוי הזה. ויאמר פניי ילכו והניחותי לך, ויאמר אליו, אם אין פניך הולכים אל תעלנו מזה, ובמה יוודע איפה כי מצאתי חן בעיניך, אני ועמך הלא בלכתך עמנו, ונפלינו, אני ועמך מכל העם אשר על פני האדמה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת ועולם נתן בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Jeff, it's good. Thank you. Yes, talk to Gabby. As always. Okay. We're putting the Torah away before the Devar Torah, yeah? Great. Okay. In that case, we turn to page. Wait, here it is. There it is. I just found it. Page 407. Please rise as you are able.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל ביד אדוני ביד משה. תורה, 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 ציווה לנו משה. תורה, 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 ציווה לנו משה. Torah, 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 ציווה לנו משה. Torah, 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 ציווה לנו משה. Can you be seated?
Okay, so my plan for the Devar today is I'm gonna do an English summary of the parsha. I'm gonna tell a little bit of the story beyond because it's really important to the questions that I have for us to discuss for the Devar. So, kitisa means when you elevate, and then in the first Aliyah, God commands Moses to take this census, right, and gets a half shekel, from each man of draft age. I guess the collected silver was melted down and made into sockets for the beams of the tabernacle. But God also instructs Moses to make a copper washstand for the tabernacle, and the priests are going to use it to wash their hands and feet before the service. And then God tells Moses to make a very complex recipe for holy anointing oil using aromatic herbs and spices, and complex instructions to anoint and sanctify the tabernacle, its vessels, Aaron and his sons, and the remainder of the oil is put aside to anoint kings and high priests of future generations. God also gives Moses the recipe for a formula for incense that's to be offered twice daily in the tabernacle.
And it's very clear that the duplication of the anointing oil or the incense for personal use is prohibited on pain of expulsion from kin and community. That's it. It's only to be used for this purpose. God, it's kind of a lengthy aliyah. It concludes with God telling Moses that the Jewish people must observe Shabbat. That's an important thing that we hear again this time. And upon finishing with speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gives Moses the 2 stone tablets of the pact, inscribed, it says, with the finger of God. Then, in the second aliyah, the Jews become anxious and impatient, waiting for Moses to return. And they tell Aaron, make us a god that shall go before us. And Aaron suggests that they make a golden calf and worship it. And he coordinates collecting the metals and crafting it. The festivities start early the next morning. God, of course, is incensed to see idolatry and threatens Moses to destroy the Jews, who he calls base and stiff-necked. Moses pleads with God to forgive the Jews' sin, and among his successful arguments, he says things like, what would the Egyptians think? They might think that you're an evil bully who brought them all the way to the desert only to finish them off here. And also remember your promise of forever to your servants Abraham and Isaac and Israel. And God acquiesces to Moses and relents from his plan to annihilate the Jews. Moses comes down with the tablets. The Torah specifies that the tablets were God's work. The writing was God's writing with God's finger incised upon the tablets. Moses sees the idolatrous revelry, becomes enraged, hurls the tablets, and breaks them. Then Moses confronts Aaron, and Aaron distorts his role, and he blames the Israelites, who he describes as a people bent on evil. He says, so I said to them, whoever has gold, take it off. And they gave it to me. I hurled it in the fire, and out came this calf. Who knew? Who knew? That's what he said. Moses then enlists the Levite men to punish the offenders. He says, slay sibling, neighbor, and kin. And 3,000 people are executed for idol worship on that day. Moses ascends Mount Sinai again in an attempt to gain complete atonement for sin. God tells Moses to lead the Jews to the promised land, but now says that God will not lead them personally, and instead will have an angel assigned to lead them. And then Adonai sent a plague upon the people for what they did with the calf that Aaron made. So somebody knew that Aaron made the calf. Seeing God's displeasure with the Jews, Moses pitches a tent outside the Israelite encampment, and the tent becomes a center of study and spirituality until the tabernacle is inaugurated. Now I'm going to go a little. Here we go. In the third aliyah, Moses asks God to reconsider the angel leading them. God reconsiders and again agrees to lead them. Moses then requests that God be exclusive to the Jews, that God's presence never manifest with any other nation other than the Jews. And now I'm going to go a little bit. It's very important to the Devar today to tell this little part, the rest of this little part of Kitiza. God agrees to Moses' request to be exclusive with the Jews, and he tells him it's because Moses is so special to him. And then Moses asks to see God's face. Moses asks to behold God's presence. And God agrees. But he tells Moses, you won't see God's face lest you die. It says, you cannot see my face, for a human being may not see me and live. And God places Moses in the safety of a cleft in a rock and shields Moses as God passes by, allowing Moses to see God's back. So first for the Devar, and I have some questions that I'm going to hand out for us to discuss after. But I have to give the background. Give the background before we have the discussion. And I'm really hoping to get an answer to a question that I swear to you I have had since I was a child and I've been afraid to ask. And today's my day. Today's my day. And I hope, we have rabbis in our family. I've never had the guts to ask this question, and I'm going to ask it today. First, I want to thank my niece, Yael Rooks-Rapport, who provided the initial thread of ideas for this Devar. I've also drawn liberally from science journals and popular science to help me consider some of the many mysteries of today's Parsha, which I've titled, The Smell of God. Smell is a very powerful thing, isn't it? Objects can exist in one place, in one time, but smell It's something we can't see or touch. It can reach far distances. It can be in many places at once. It can invite you into a new place, and it can take you back in time to a place that only exists in the far reaches of your memory. And among the mysteries of this week's Torah portion is that God seems to vehemently oppose the Israelites trying to make an association between God and a physical object, but encourages them, mandates them, even compels them to create a connection between holiness and smell. Ki Tisa very famously warns against idol worship. That's the big lesson here, right? It's the worst thing you can do. But it also contains this recipe and instructions for sacred anointing oil and incense that's to be put on the priests on the tent of the meeting, the ark, the altars, all the instruments and utensils used during the sacrifice. Every person, every object, every place associated with God, and nowhere else. Nowhere else. This is no ordinary cooking oil. It is holy oil. It's made of fragrant spices, including cinnamon, myrrh, cassia, cane, olive oil. And it can't be made by just anyone. It must be, in the Torah, expertly blended. Rashi explains that it should be made by someone very experienced in the delicate art of mixing perfumes. This aromatic oil, it's tied to everything people associate with God. So God ensures that people identify everything godly with this smell. Everything associated with God and worship and holiness emitted a very specific, spicy fragrance, a smell that would have reached everybody in the Israelite camp, allowing or actually compelling everyone, including people not officially part of the sacrificial service, and those who never stepped inside a sanctuary, to share in the experience. Now, aromatherapists will tell you that inhaling this spice improves mood and vigor and concentration. I'll digress for a moment to share some information about the odor associated with this spice blend. As a brain scientist, I can tell you that there is pretty good evidence that it can significantly enhance cognitive function, concentration, learning, memory. It has anti-anxiety and antidepressant properties. It might even make you kinder, although I think that was a study done by Cinnabon. It includes important medicinal plants that affect sperm and testosterone production. Smell is an ancient sense in our brains. All living things, from single-celled organisms through humans, through bloodhounds, can detect chemicals in their environment. Odors are molecules, and smell is sensing those chemical molecules. We all know that smell is one of the 5 senses, typically listed last, right? In the would you rather game of what would you rather if you had to lose one of the senses, right? See, feel, hear, touch, taste, and smell. But smell is not last because it's least, at least not in brain science. I think it's last because it's unique among the 5 senses in the brain. Olfactory or smell information takes a very different path, a completely different path into the brain, through the brain input than all the other senses. Most sensory information is funneled first through an area called the thalamus. And the thalamus of the brain is a region that receives input from a lot of different sources, and then it directs it to specialized parts of the brain. And in brain science, this is the stage at which a person is thought to become consciously aware that they are sensing something. But in contrast with smell, the information passes first through parts of the brain that are responsible for olfactory memory and processing, and this means that we actually process the content and memory of a smell before we are consciously aware of what that smell is. And another important difference is that smells have a uniquely direct access to the olfactory cortex, and this is an area of the brain that's in very close proximity to emotions and emotional responses. So smell is unique among the senses, and if you think about it, it is so unique and primal, we don't even have a language to describe it. We have very rich language to describe things like objects. We can describe them in colors and shapes and sizes and textures, and even sounds that are experienced kind of like smell in an immersed or an immersive or kind of a circumambient kind of a way. we can explicitly describe those with metrics like volume and pitch and tone and intensity, alone or in combination. But what is the metric of smell? It's so primal, we don't have words for it. We typically describe smells in comparison to another smell, right? Oh, it smelled like, and then we put in another familiar aroma. We don't have words or metrics. So why is this, I've digressed, right? Why is this all important to the Torah portion today? To God's insistence that the tabernacle and all things associated with God be linked to smell, but not to vision or touch. So I wondered about three things in that regard, three things that I'd like us to discuss today. And I'll describe them first. So here are my thoughts. Idolatry is a physical representation of God, and I think most people associate idolatry with objects, with things that are perceived in visual and tactile modalities. So from the first story of Abraham and his father's idol shop, smashing the idols in his father's shop, there's really disdain and even ridicule for the idea of people who buy into the concept of worshiping with idols. God calls the Israelites base and stiff-necked, which is related to the concept of being a redneck. It's stubbornly opinionated, it's uncompromising, it's prideful, it's unwilling to do what other people want. It's kind of the biblical equivalent of a QAnon-believing, anti-vaxxer election denier. It's certainly depicted as an embarrassment, that's for sure. Yet, it arises from a fundamental desire to experience the presence of God when praying, which is understandable, if not laudable. And maybe I thought, maybe it's the need to put a face on God. That is, the need to put God in object form that makes it so pathetic and embarrassing to people. I mean, a calf has eyes and ears and a mouth, but God, of course, is an abstract concept. Yet, Moses, in that little bit that I read in the story, Moses has a similar desire to see God's face and feel God's presence. And this parsha, maybe more than any other one that I can remember, and if you were in 2018 and Tony and I did this before, it has a lot of anthropomorphizing of God, right? Many instances of anthropomorphic references of God's appearance. God refers to God's face, which Moses and no other human can see, right? And God has a back. God has a hand to shield Moses in the cleft of the rock, and God has a finger to write on the tablets. A calf has a certain kind of a face and hands and fingers, but I think the fundamental concept of physical features is the same. So what Moses wants is the same thing that the Israelites want, to see God. And the Israelites are considered base and stiff-necked and pathetic for their wish, but Moses is not. So that's my first observation about this. The second, and this is the question that I haven't asked ever and always wondered. I don't mean to offend anybody, but here it is. The Parsha stresses avoiding idolatry and focusing on the real thing. Why is Torah worship, including bowing to the Torah, not considered idolatry? Isn't the Torah a physical object that represents God and the divine? Must the thing have a face to be idolatry? And couldn't God's face look like a Torah? So the last thing I considered is the unexplained explanation between worship associated with physical, visual, and tactile representations, which of course are prohibited, versus olfactory representations, which are mandated. Why is associating God with certain kinds of physical symbols an anathema or an abomination, whereas associating God with smell, divine, ideal, and mandated? So I'm a brain scientist and I'm a mental health professional. I am not a physicist, so I don't know properties of matter and energy. I'm not a chemist, I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, but I know that both objects and odors are physical, right? I mean, physical chemical distinction for odor, that's false. We smell things without changing any part of the molecular structure of the substance. That's why odor is classified as a physical property. Chemical changes take place in our bodies in response to odor and in response to our feelings about the odor, but there's no change or reaction in the odor molecules themselves. So odors are physical representations of God, but they are not considered idolatry. So perhaps one very important distinction is the idea that this aroma smelled like no other smell. And you have to know from science, autobiographical memories, or memories of our own personal history that are associated with smell, are more ingrained and intense and emotionally tinged than memories associated with any other kind of sensory cue. They are powerful cues that trigger powerful memories and feelings. And my niece, actually back to her, thank her, noted that in the same way that the smell of baking challah can turn Friday into the beginning of Shabbat, smell can connect us with holiness in our everyday lives. And perhaps God knew, she said, over time and repeated exposure, that the delicious aroma that wafts out of the synagogue and down into the street, some people will suddenly realize they are hungry for some Judaism. So, here are my questions for today. Those 3 questions.
While you're doing that, may I make a comment?
Yes, of course.
Because I really enjoyed what you said, and it made me think that when we speak of the face, one of the ways of understanding it, panim, is not just a face, but sometimes it's a surface. And it's interesting that an odor is something that's real, but it doesn't have a surface.
It has a very small surface.
Oh well, I mean there are these molecules.
How small do you have to be before you're not, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I mean, I think that's a very good question, yeah. Right.
All right,
But
so.
I'm just thinking, you know, I mean, and you sort of think, well, does God have a surface? Is there a limit, you know, that God is here but not there?
Is God abstract or is God physical? Right? Yeah.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah. So, first question, idolatry is a physical representation of God. It's forbidden, but it arises from a fundamental desire to experience the presence of God when praying. Seems understandable. Like the Israelites, Moses had a desire to see God's face and feel God's presence. He begged for it. He begged for it, and God partly granted that wish to see God. Why are the Israelites base and stiff-necked? Because they want to see God and feel God, and Moses is not. Anybody?
I think that, like, your point is well taken with this comment, but I feel like the Israelites have the wrong God. And like, you know, when Moses has the direct connection, and the Israelites are lacking it. So then, when they make the golden calf, that's like not the real God. But Moses, his desire, he gets to ask the real God.
So if you're connected, if you're well connected, then your desire to see God is not based in stiff-necked.
Yeah.
But if you're not well connected, if you're not elite, if you're not special to God, then your desire to see God is pathetic and embarrassing.
I mean, I don't necessarily believe that, but that's what I've always taken from the story. Yeah.
It doesn't say that his desire was not based. He just got his desire granted. So maybe God didn't think it was necessary, but he thought Moses had put in time to deserve. Anyway, I don't know.
The Israelites, they left their homes and and put all of their faith and lives. You know what I mean? In this, seems like you're right. They didn't have a direct connection. They weren't elite enough. You know what I mean? So they tried to make their own. Yeah.
I mean, I think the connection between your first and your fifth question on here about why is Aaron not punished, and this one is that Moses asked God to see God, whereas the Israelites asked Aaron to see God. They didn't ask God to see God. And technically, Aaron didn't ask God to see God either. Aaron created the calf, but did not actually ask God either, or wasn't the one doing the asking. So I think there's a question. I'm not sure I exactly believe this, but there's something about who you're asking to see.
I think that's an excellent point. If they thought that they weren't praying to God, if they thought that they were either, the calf itself was God, and you know what I mean, and it wasn't, Yeah, I guess to me, you know what I mean, as the mental health professional in me understands that, you know what I mean, people, you know, that they wanted the comfort of the presence of God, and so they made it, you know, like you have a plushie, you know what I mean, and the plushie isn't like a real thing, a real animal or something that loves you back, but that plushie is, you know what I mean, it comes from this place, it comes from this real place of you know, wanting the same thing that Moses wanted, but not being connected, and not, you know what I mean, maybe not knowing how.
Or they wanted the comfort of the presence of something.
Of God. They wanted they said make a God. We want God.
Sometimes two people can ask the same question, and from one of them it's bad, and from the other it's good.
Yes.
So if you're looking at Haggadah, the wise child asks a question, the evil child asks the same question.
Right. And but why is it that we have such we feel the Israelites, you know, are so bad?
I go back to Maimonides in the Guide to the Perplexed, and he says all of this stuff is for the common people. For the intellectual, God is completely different. God has no face, God has no hands, has no body. God is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And it's a completely different God for the intellectual and for the common people. So all this story here, according to Maimonides, the Guide to the Perplexed, is just lowbrow stuff.
So there are two gods. There's the lowbrow God and the
There's the
highbrow
lowbrow God, and there's the real
and the
God.
Rotterdam God. Sorry, old drinking song. Sorry. Yeah. Well, but the Torah says, you know what I mean? Are we supposed to believe the Torah? The Torah says that God, you know, God says God has a face and a finger.
Well, the difference, again, according to Maimonides, was apparently a no-no for the Ashkenazi and okay for the Sephardim. I've never figured out why that difference, but so not all Jews accepted Maimonides. A large segment doesn't. But that's just something to think about.
Well, that's a very elitist view of
Maimonides was very elitist.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we say this every Shabbat, and it's always seemed paradoxical to me. It was once explained to me that I forget what the explanation was. Blessed are you, the imageless are God, life of all the worlds, who made me in your image. So, what's going on with that? If God is truly imageless, how can we be made in His image? But we obviously want to be
with
made.
the finger of God.
We obviously want to be made in God's image.
Yes.
We want to be a reflection of Him, and yet this, of course, implies that He would be like us, and that's problematic. Judaism is talked of as the first monotheistic religion, but I'm also curious to what extent it was the first religion in which God was not, or a God even, was not represented. You think of alternatives of cultures and religions in which they were polytheistic. I wonder whether in any of them they had no representation. I think if you have many gods, the thing is you need a representation of each god to keep them separate. If you just have one, then it's okay. I think the two go together.
I think that last point is really fascinating to me. It's true. You need a physical, or you need some sort of way to reference them or categorize them or classify them. You know, like your Pokemon or Care Bears.
But in Judaism, we might not have physical idols, but we have symbols that are supposed to be representative. Every time you see a mezuzah, you're supposed to see the Shin for Shaddai, and that's God right there. Wearing tefillin is supposed to be a symbol, so we don't have like idols in the sense of looks like us, but we have these objects that are supposed to remind you of God. You're supposed to see it on talit, supposed to remind you of the mitzvot given from God. So we have all these other things that are supposed to serve as reminders in lieu of having those individual representations.
Yeah, we don't. We do.
Yeah, so what if Aaron had said, oh, this golden calf, it's a symbol of God? Would that be okay?
I'm not God.
I once heard an explanation of the golden calf that if they weren't worshiping the calf, that God is invisible and God was sitting on the calf, and they needed a physical representation of God's throne, for instance. And so they really weren't worshiping the calf. They were embracing the definition of an invisible God, but they needed something physical to focus on. And that's, to me, that's similar to the Torah.
That's
we're
what
not really
I'm just
worshiping.
going, maybe you're getting into the next question to answer my next question.
We're not worshiping the Torah. We're worshiping what's within the Torah, or what's written as the Torah.
But we do. We turn around and we bow to the Torah, which, you know what I mean. It's like it is an object. If someone drew a face on the Torah, or or why does it have to have a face? I don't understand why. You know what I mean? Why is it different to be bowing to the Torah? You know what I mean? I like, again, I don't mean to offend anybody, but why are we bow to the Torah? We kiss the Torah. It's very sacred to us. You know what I mean? It's different. It's different than other kinds of.
Are we bowing to the Torah, or are we bowing to God because He gave us the Torah?
But we're facing the Torah when we do it. Otherwise we could bow in any direction. But we're bowing to the Torah. We kiss the Torah. We don't. We were so worried. We were so glad. We usually don't do a whole Torah service with RCD. And Tony and I were just having like anxiety conniption fits because we're like, we take the Torah out. What if we touch the Torah's cushy in a way that it's not supposed to be touched? You know what I mean? It's a breastplate. What if we do something to the Torah that somehow, you know what I mean? Like, I've been at Torah services, but I've never been responsible for actually taking it out and undressing the Torah. You know what I mean? So thank God the rabbis created the Torah service, because that's how we don't even treat our prayer books like that or anything like that. Why is it not idolatry?
Well, so I'm going to make
Because we're not bowing.
I'll make it even worse. We now have this amazing technology where through apps like Safaria, you can have the entire text of the Torah on your cell phone. But we don't bow to our phones when the text is on our cell phone.
It's a little too
Well,
unknown.
maybe we weren't taught to. Maybe we weren't told to.
Well, that's the thing, is it the text itself or is it the object itself, right? If it were the text, then in theory we would bow to it in all of its forms, including the printed chumash, etc. But we don't. It is the object itself that causes our reverence. And so there are actually rabbis who have gotten rid of the hakafah of having the Torah come around for people to kiss it for that reason, that it seems like, wait a minute, why are we doing this?
I think that's common though, even taking it to Americana, for example, like the flag is an equivalent, right? Modern political disagreements aside, it's an equivalent. You're saluting the flag. You're not saluting the person wearing the tank top with the flag on it, right? You're saluting the flag not because you're worshiping the flag, but again, modern politics aside, but because you're like, it's a representative of your belief of the country.
But that's what idolatry is. Idolatry is a physical representation. That's what idolatry is. It's defined as. It's a physical representation of God. Representation of God.
As opposed to worshiping the idol itself.
I think the point that somebody made about like, are we thinking that God is sitting on this? But remember that the Israelites, they did not have a Torah. Right. They did not have the tablets. You know what I mean? So they made something that was, you know what I mean? Once we had the Torah, once we had the tablets, there's something, with God's writing to worship on it. But they didn't have that yet.
I don't think you're worshiping the Torah. You're worshiping what's in it. You're worshiping the words and the stories that's in it. But the golden calf is nothing but gold that you've taken from the earth that has no value unless you've given to it. And it's the words and the stories that give you. And just like you can't, in a sense, you may pick one perfume versus another, you're not worshiping that, but you may be looking at it. You may look at a bottle of Chanel, and what you're remembering is the smells inside. So it's what was in it, and you basically, rather than what's there, and only you have something that's on it. Given that you're speaking for someone who doesn't like Torah services, as you know, in a sense, I do see that. Just like a mezuzah. You're not worshiping the mezuzah. Theoretically, there's a little prayer that you're supposed to think of, I believe, when you have in it. Okay.
May I suggest that there's a fundamental difference between worship and respect. When you bow to the Torah, you're respecting the Torah. You're not worshiping it. And the same for the mezuzah and all these other objects. They're objects of respect, but not of worship.
That's an excellent distinction. That's helping.
I think also with these questions that you're bringing up, it's important to remember context, right? So in the case of the golden calf, to remember that the whole reason behind why are the Jews in the desert, why are they wandering, why are they going through a process at this point, is to differentiate themselves from who they've been and from who they left behind. And so I wonder if also part of the issue with the golden calf is that it was reminiscent of how the Egyptians practiced. And then
Oh, that's so good because the next part, right? Because the next part of this, that's so good because the next part of Kitiza that we didn't read, God says they should just annihilate the cultures of, of everybody else who has idols and who does all these things. In the very next part, God says, whatever you do, you have to wipe out these other cultures.
that they're being separate, that they're being different, that they're taking away the remnants of what the Egyptians did, and the golden calf was too close to that.
That's a good one. I'm getting the time. Okay, well, well, thank you. We'll skip number 4 then.
Yasher Koach.
Great question.
You're a monkey.
Where are we?
Lisa, that was amazing. And as you were speaking, I realized I didn't actually put back the Torah. No.
I noticed that when I was talking
Which
about
was
it.
fabulous, because then we had the question of what do we think about this beautiful scroll itself. I would almost suggest that maybe we do Misha Barak and Sheffield while the Torah is out. And
Okay.
then put it back. Is that?
Okay, so we are now on Mishabera, which is either on page 684 or it may be in the back, very back. Oh, or on the bottom. Okay, great.
Stop for names.
Mishabera Avotenu Ekor Havracha Imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishevera imotenu ekor habracha avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So does anybody have somebody they want to say Misha Barak for? Susan Goldsmith wants to say Misha Barak for her aunt Sylvia Schneider and her friend Josephine Kazi. Anybody else?
Jerry Zeiger.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Jerry Zeiger.
Bridget Brian Sky.
Your father?
Greg, you're out.
Rose Cavallero, Joe Eisenberg.
My brother Nissan Ben Bela.
Solomon Ben Sarah.
Willa Silverman.
Sandy Schwartz.
The downtown synagogue also has Marjorie Gilbert, Lee and Paul Blisman, Bob Naphtali, Muriel Smith, Chava Knox, and Bert Vipond.
Woodward. Thank you. And now for the Shehechianus, does anybody have anything fabulous to share? Some good news?
Spring break.
Spring break?
Spring break is good.
Okay.
We're all still here.
We're all
Those
still
of us
yes.
that are here, and that's fabulous in and of itself.
Yes. Happy to see many of you. Yes, all of you. All right, so the Shehechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'yanu b'zman hazeh.
Amen.
Page 433. We'll put the Torah away and then we'll move it to it. Ya'alanu et Shem Adonai, K'nizah, Shalom V'Ado. Please rise as your name. of right to page 441. V'hachtom natati lachem torati al ta'azovu.
Netzayim hi l'machazim v'toteha merusha derafeha arei noam v'chol netziloteha shalom Hashiveinu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Page 445 for Aleinu. Please remain standing as you're able. Aleinu Neshabeach Adon Hakol, La'atei Kidulai Yotzer Reshit, Shalom Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlavim HaKadosh Baruch Hashamayim v'yosei haaretz V'moshe yikaro b'shamayim ima'am Shechina tuzo V'godlei meromim Hu Eloheinu Einav Eloheinu v'chazulato Hakatu b'torato Yagatayu Shekota elevamecha Ki Adonai hu Elohim V'shamayim ima'al Ve'al haaretz We'll continue on the bottom of page 449. V'nemar v'haya Adonai v'melech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad. You may be seated.
In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the birth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys and yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, and we remember them. I'd like to share names. Susan Goldsmith would like us to remember her dear friend Myrna Felt. And she has a yahrzeit for her mom, our beloved Ethel Grossman, and her father, Manuel Grossman.
The downtown synagogue continues to mourn the losses in the past 11 months of Zachary David Williams, Lorraine Hillman, Michael Jason Altman, Howard Cohen, Eugene Dreicher, Buddy Hillman, Sam Glass, Maxine Gutfreund, David Schoen, and Louis Fishman, and you can memorize the outsides this week of Samuel Phyllis Davis, Marcus Cox, Nachman Tevlo, William Schwartzman, Florence Balin, Bonnie Marash, Esther Alpert, Lita Polsky-Skolnick, Clara Jacobson, George Simon, Richard Balin, and Peter Koloch.
Anybody else?
Elaine Zeiger. All those who are in our hearts and minds, but whose names can't come to our lips this afternoon, and painfully and wrongly going on.
Robert Owen.
Rise if that's your custom. Yikadal v'yikadash v'yirabah v'yalman v'yirach v'yutei v'yamlit malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei v'chol beit Yisrael v'agalah v'yizman karev v'yimru amen v'yeshmei ra'ah v'yarach v'yalam v'yalam Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitlaman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei v'kushar Leila v'yilam v'yikol birchata v'shirata v'tushutata v'nechamata amiran v'yalman v'yimru amen Yehesh lama rava min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen Oseh shalom v'yimramah hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yal kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen Announcements. Anybody? Any announcements? I have none.
So Purim was amazing. Pesach is coming. Woo! So we're very excited. We are going to again do a Seder in partnership with the Bethel Community Transformation Center. It is the Sunday before Pesach starts, which is
April 2nd.
Thank you. April 2nd. Thank you very much. So we're excited to invite all of you. That'll be from about 3 to 5 p.m. at the Bethel building, but we'll be providing the food. Phil, I know you had an announcement that you've been wanting to make. Emails maybe?
Well, we had our first 2 programs for Shared Future.
Yes.
Our third and final program in the series is going to be on March 30th. It'll be by Zoom, and it will feature Dr. Saeed Khan and Dr. Howard Lukovich talking, generally speaking, about wokeness. And it's a very fascinating discussion, interweaving how Judaism and the Islam religions are the same in many respects. So if you'd like to attend, I encourage you.
And we set the dates for my next learning series, but we haven't set the topic. So please let me know if there's something in particular you want to learn. In the fall, we did Ada Judaism's Best Ideas. Open to suggestions. I have some ideas, but I would love to hear if there's something in particular you'd love to learn in this spring.
Michigan State University is kicking off their Jewish and Israeli Film Festival next weekend, and they're bringing in the Yemen Blues, which is a New York and Israeli-based ensemble of very fantastic musicians.
Cool.
Yeah.
No other announcements? Adon Olam. Asher Malach, Yitzir Nira, Liet Nazar, V'Teshuko, Azai Malach Shemon Nikra Adon Olam.
Ilot HaKol, Elado Yilot Torah Adon Olam, Vehu Haya, Vehu Obed, Vehu Yeveti Para Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Asher Kol, Yitzir Nira, Liet Nazar, V'Teshuko, Azai Malach Shemon Nikra Adon Olam, Yin Sheni, Lam Shilo L'Hachbira Adon Olam, B'li Rishit, B'li Tachit, V'lo Hamizrach Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Asher Kol, Azai Malach Shemon Nikra Adon Olam, V'chai Goli, V'tzor Hezli V'tzara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, V'manosi, V'nakosi V'yom Ekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Asher Kol, Tzir Nira, Liet Nasa, V'Teshuko, Azai Malach Shemon Nikra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Ve'im Ruchi, V'Yati, Adon Eloheinu Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.